Adolescents, older teenagers, young adults are rejecting feminism, and people really need to start paying attention to this. Yesterday, I made a video that TikTok has said it's not allowed, even though it was very popular with a lot of great comments. I suspect it's because in the video I mentioned a certain Mr. Tate, and apparently you cannot mention him on this platform because no matter what you're saying, if you're talking about him, it's considered hate speech.
Trying to stop people from talking about key figures like Andrew Tate is wild to me because it's not going to do anything. Eventually, someone else will take his place. And even if that doesn't happen in a major way, the ideas that people have aren't just going to go away. I found this video particularly interesting because I didn't think young people were rejecting feminism like that. I know that people have their problems with it, but I didn't think it was something teenagers were talking about. But I guess you learn something new every day.
What I was saying was that he is not the cause of the problem. The problem existed before him. He's just capitalized on it, and if anything, has brought attention and awareness to it. And we as a society need to stop taking the easy route and saying that he is the problem and look at what the problem actually is.
I fully agree with her. Men have been struggling for ages, so when someone like Andrew Tate comes along, of course they're going to gravitate towards him, because it's not like anyone else is trying to help men out in a big way. When you spend years talking about how men are toxic just for existing and constantly blame them for everything that's wrong in the world, when someone rises up out of the ashes and speaks their mind, it's going to get people's attention.
So yesterday I shared my own experience of losing a child. She made a very, very silly decision at the age of 16 to get my attention.
Damn, that's heartbreaking, man. My heart goes out to the family.
And I will regret that for the rest of my life because she should have had my attention. And I was so busy trying to pay the bills and keep everything going in the household that I sometimes didn't give her the attention that she needed. And that is why I'm hard on other parents, because I don't want you to learn the way that I learn. I don't want you to ever have to plan your child's funeral.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's easy to get caught up with work, especially if you're struggling financially. But this can come at the expense of your family, just like it did in this situation. It's easy to think that you'll spend time with them later or support them when you have some free time. But if you always operate like this, you won't spend any time with them because that free time you imagine will come at some later date in the future never arrives.
But that's happening more and more to parents now, and we need to look at why. Now, the rejection of feminism by young adults is as a result of their childhood, and it's quite a logical answer. It's quite a logical solution. Obviously, it's not that simple. Rejecting feminism is not going to solve the issue. The issue is much deeper. What they are experiencing is resentment of their childhoods because, they are forced to get up early, dragged out of bed, put into breakfast club at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then not picked up until 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. They spend an hour with their parents.
Okay, so it's young adults who are rejecting feminism, not teenagers. I guess that makes more sense. While I can kind of see the whole thing about them rejecting it because of their childhood, I wonder if men and women are rejecting it for the same reason. It might even be that women aren't rejecting it at all, and it's just men. For me, though, I don't think it even has to be that deep. But when you're told that the world's a certain way when you're young, but it actually appears to be very different when you get older, that might be the reason someone rejects an idea. When it comes to young men rejecting the idea of feminism, I'd guess it's more to do with the fact that for their whole lives, they've been told that men and women are equal and that they're not really needed for anything. But when they go on that first date, and a woman gets upset or ends up rejecting them because they wanted to go 50-50, it might leave them a little confused. They're probably thinking, if men and women are the same and should be treated as equals, why am I still expected to pay for everything? Of course, this is a real simple way of looking at things, but I'd say it's things like that which are causing young men, at least, to reject the idea of feminism because what they've been told about the world and how the world actually is very different.
And then they do it all over again. And then at the weekends, their parents are so tired that they get given an iPad or an iPhone or put in front of a movie because their parents don't have the energy or the time to do activities with them because they're tired and the kids are tired. And this is because now everything is so expensive that both parents have to work. Being able to stay at home with your child is now considered a luxury. In the UK, the government decides that at 2.5, they're going to try and help you get back into the workforce. It's nothing to do with the developmental age of your child. I'm a child psychologist. Studies have suggested that children don't need to be put in education until they're 7. You know, the education system in Scandinavia is far superior. They learn through play.
The days of only one parent having to work are long gone. And unless you're one of the lucky few who can actually afford to do this, it's going to be the case that both parents have to work. A lot of people blame this on women entering the workforce as it lowered the cost of labor. And while there's a lot of truth to that, it's not that simple or even straightforward. I mean, the same thing's sort of happening right now with AI, which in its own way is flooding the job market. But with AI, jobs are being wiped out completely. And I imagine that there's a growing number of companies who are willing to pay less for things like graphic design or web design. But let me stop right there before I go off topic.
The government wants you back in the workplace. The government wants your child in the education system because they will then learn how to conform and are more likely to go into the workplace. They want you to be having more children, not because the planet needs more children, but because they need more people in the workplace.
I mean, I can't argue with anything she's saying right there. It's all about getting everybody into the rat race.
It has nothing to do with what's beneficial for your child. The studies are out there. I'm a child psychologist. Putting your child into nursery 5 days a week at the age of 6 months is not beneficial for them. But you don't have a choice because you have bills to pay. Everything is so expensive. And I am on your side. But the younger generations are getting more and more and more resentful, and they're loud. And unfortunately, they have decided that feminism, rejecting it and making women stay at home, is a simple answer, a simple solution to this problem, because they wanted their parents at home. All children want is time. And the one thing that parents don't have is time.
Yeah, the cost of the nursery is crazy. And it's wild to me that even parents who can't afford to have one person stay at home would rather give their kids to someone else to look after.
So I can see how it seems like a simple solution, but it's not, because the problem is capitalism. The problem is we don't have enough money. You know, most women I know, they're working to pay for the childcare. It is ridiculous. But why does it have to be the women that stay at home? Why can't it be dads that stay at home? You know, my husband would absolutely love to be a stay-at-home dad, whereas I have a lot more ambition than him, you know?
I mean, dads can stay at home, and it might be the case that a lot of guys would love to. And while women might say they'd be happy with an arrangement like this, in practice, it can be a very different story. I've spoken to women who stand for everything that feminism's about, but when talking about being with a man who'd stay home with the kids, it was a massive no-no. So while I don't doubt that some women would be fine with having a stay-at-home husband, it's still not something the majority will go for, even if they could afford it.
These are the conversations that young people are having now. These are the situations that they are talking about. And I'm not saying that feminism is going to get rolled back, but what I'm saying is that that is becoming louder and louder because children are resenting their childhoods. They don't think it's fair. It's not the childhood they wanted. Now, don't get me wrong. It's pretty much your job as a parent to cause them some sort of trauma. But when it's not your fault, when life is now so expensive, and when we all now consume a lot more than we used to, what do we do?
Personally, I don't think the childhood thing is that deep, but if it is, I'd love to see some of these conversations that she referenced young people are having when it comes to why they're rejecting feminism.
I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine who had a young child, and she wanted to work part-time and stay at home. And I remember going through her finances with her, and it would have been possible. It would have absolutely have been possible for her to go to 2.5 or even 3 days a week. But she would have had to downsize. She would have had to make a lot of sacrifices. And when it came down to it, she didn't want to make those sacrifices. And I remember, because I'm quite blunt, I was like, okay, so the 2 holidays a year are more important than spending time with your child. And she was so angry with me, and I regret saying it, but that is what it came down to. She could, she chose not to. And I think that is what a lot of kids are saying now.
That's wild, but she's right. Her friend did prefer the life of luxury rather than spending time with her kid. So I don't know why she got upset about that. It's a fact. She might have talked about wanting to spend time with her child and all that, but her actions demonstrated that it wasn't that important to her. In this situation, though, I can't help but ask, where is the dad?
They don't see the other side of it because, you know, yes, you could have mummy at home, but you wouldn't get an iPad and you wouldn't get to go on holiday and you wouldn't get this, that and the other. And, you know, having been brought up with all of those things, it's really idealistic to say, well, that's fine, I would have preferred it. You don't know. But these are the conversations that are being had by the younger generations, and we really need to start paying attention and helping them to figure out the solution, because they don't want their children to have the childhoods that they had. And we need to listen because it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, she's right that we're living in a society that's all about consumption, and all this obviously comes at a price. The more people you have in a population, the more ideas and opinions people will have about how things should be done, and these won't always align. And if you want a clear picture of this exact thing on display, just look at the state of the US right now. Sometimes, you can't help but think if things would be better if the country was divided in two. Maybe people would be happier that way. Who knows? Anyway, I want to know what you guys think, so share your thoughts in the comments.